Mafia-like criminal organisations have shown since their inception a certain interest in politics, since it represented and represents today a fundamental factor for the control of their territory. The survival of many mafia groups over the decades is due precisely to the ties that they have managed to create with public institutions and with various political figures. After all, the mafia has always sought power and has managed to use it through numerous economic and political instruments. In its process of establishing roots in its chosen territory and gaining social acceptance, the mafia has made use of methods of control similar to those of the institutions, and it's precisely for this reason that it has always needed a connection with the world of institutions as well as politics. Episodes, characters, and documents reveal how in Italy a direct and hidden thread has developed amongst bosses and prominent figures of the state, creating a political and institutional framework rich in shadow and secret alliances. Mafia organisations have always been characterised by a series of factors that make them very similar to illegal political parties. In fact, over time they have succeeded in controlling certain circumscribed territory, silently dictating the rules through extortion, threats and force. The search for power, the accumulation of wealth and the insertion in fruitful sectors of the economy, alliances and strategies allow the various criminal organisations to survive and increase their power. In a certain sense, many groups carry out precise strategies of a political nature that allow them to persevere in their trafficking in peace and without particular obstacles. In order to achieve this objective, of course, tactical alliances with other groups are necessary, and this is where institutions come into play. If one receives a pass from one or more representatives of justice, it's much easier and less expensive to achieve one's goals. But is such a thing possible? Despite the fact that this phenomenon is common everywhere, specifically Italian history shows that yes, it is absolutely possible. The negotiations between the state and the mafia leave their first traces right at the formation of the Republic itself in the second half of the 19th century. The union of the country would not have been so easy for Garibaldi without the help of the Sicilian mafia. It was thanks to the Sicilian mafia that Garibaldi, with only a few soldiers, managed to land in Sicily and conquer the entire island in a very short time. But criminal organisations did not help Garibaldi only in Sicily. Giuseppe Garibaldi, when arriving in Naples in September 1860, was immediately supported by Camorrists, dressed in uniform and the tricolour cockade to symbolise their support for the army of the north. Afterwards, known figures of the criminal world such as Salvatore de Crescenzo ensured the maintenance of public order. As a result, bosses and clans contributed to the realisation of the Republic. And somehow, after the unification, they managed to find their own legitimacy, becoming those secret and obscure organisations that are still very present in the Italian territory today, and of course internationally. The world wars have brought in the background the phenomenon of organised crime, which for much of the 20th and 21st centuries has managed to maintain its connections and its strength in silence and from the dark shadows of society. Over the decades, mafia associations have built a solid base and structure that has received social recognition through ties to religion, commerce, and of course the institutions. Being characterised by secrecy, the population has never fully grasped the enormous presence of mafia-like organised crime in southern Italy, and indeed throughout the whole nation. It has been the secrets, the unspoken things, the shady friendships between various realities that have allowed many clans to act undisturbed and commit terrible cruelties. And all this would have continued in the dark if it hadn't been, ironically, for the mafia itself. In fact, it was mafia turncoats who were the first to reveal the solid network of relations between the mafia and politicians. A famous example was Tommaso Buscetta, who, after the murders of the judges Falcone and Borsalino, decided to provide very important information about the connections between organised crime and the institutions. Tommaso Buscetta, as we've seen in our previous videos, gave a particular name, Salvo Lima, and his simple words were the fuse that triggered what is now known in Italy as the trial of the century. Salvo Lima was a Sicilian politician. and Member of Parliament belonging to the Christian Democratic Party. He was a powerful man, elected mayor of Palermo in 1958, and occupied various important roles over the years, being supported on many occasions by Giulio Andreotti, founder of the Christian Democratic Party, and man at the top of Italian politics for about 40 years. Salvo Lima, however, was also an ambiguous character, connected to the Sicilian Mafia, so much so that he was investigated and appeared just too many times in the reports of the Anti-Mafia Parliamentary Commission. In spite of this, Salvo Lima was able to grab numerous roles of power. Tommaso Buscetta, as well as other turncoats, declared to the authorities that Lima was a bridge between the mafiosi in Palermo and the Italian politicians in Rome. A turncoat even stated before the judge that Salvo Lima had been very close to men of Cosa Nostra, for whom he had been the link between Sicilian Mafia and the Prime Minister Giulio Andreotti for the needs of the Sicilian Mafia. This was therefore a striking example of how close the relations between the Mafia and institutional powers were. But Salvo Lima's story didn't end there. He was killed by the Mafia in 1992, and afterwards something never seen before happened. Giulio Andreotti, remembered today for having been 7 times Prime Minister and 21 times a Minister of the Republic, was investigated and called to answer in court for conspiracy. Such a thing had never happened before, and to see such a high office of state publicly questioned was a blow to the whole of Italian society. In the trial of first instance, Andreotti was included in the statements of numerous turncoats and former mafiosi, such as Messina, Buscetta, Mutolo and Sindonia. In October the 23rd, 1999, Andreotti was acquitted for insufficient evidence, but his connections with several figures in the criminal world were recognised and acknowledged. After a second and third level of judgment, and at the end of a complicated process, Giulio Andreotti's acquittal was definitive with regard to the charge of collusion with the Mafia after 1980. Andreotti was not punished for what happened before because the crime was prescribed. As ancient and contemporary Italian history shows, Mafia and politics are indeed deeply linked, and still today. Justice struggles to clean up corrupt institutional groups, avoid the interference of criminal organisations, and indeed prevent the Mafia from having a dangerous control over politics. What a tangled web is weaved throughout Italian society, eh? Well, that's all for this time. Thanks so much for watching, and of course all your fascinating comments, which we do read and really do appreciate. So keep them coming. And of course, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already done so. We've loads more videos coming soon. So until then, ciao.